And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Well, hello, and welcome along to another We Happy For You 506 podcast, The Nearly Men, with my beautiful co-host, Doug Allen, who is mildly distracted, and our guest, Reg Jans. How are you, Reggie?
Hey Matt, good to see you. Doing well, thank you.
Good. How are you doing, Dougie?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Good to see you both.
Good to see you too. Hair looks good.
It's growing. Doesn't
Yeah,
take long, does it? So does
Yeah,
yours. Well, we've got the similar
mine just
sort of
stopped
mop
growing.
going.
yeah. Yeah, not trying to rub it in, Reg. I just know
Yeah.
he's looking very hair. Yeah, it is a bit moppy. Mine is too, as well. How you doing after the
Haven't,
tour, Reg?
haven't you just come off a tour as well?
Yeah, me and Reg, we just had a monumental tour, which we'll deep dive into on this podcast.
Oh,
A
great.
little bit like a debrief and a rallying cry for future podcasts and tours. Yeah, that was a good one. It was a very good one. How you doing, Reg? Did you recover? Were you straight back out the next day?
Yeah. I went back home right after the bus got back to the RV area in the morning. But this one was special in many ways. I mean, not just that we bring a great bunch of people to the battlefields, or that we show the masters of the air cast, the exact locations where their characters fought or where the plane crashed and where they were buried. It was a bit, not that much of a. It was historical tours, of course. That's what we do, and we bring history to people. We bring people to history. But this had an emotional part of it when we did the unveiling of the monuments dedicated to the crew of Alice from Dallas on Sunday. So that day was basically short tour, but it had a lot of emotional value to the people on the tour and the people who were there at that moment.
So it just a cap for the audience. This one was a Masters of the Air tour, effectively,
Oh, well,
that followed a crew or followed several.
no, basically, it was supposed to be a 2 day Battle of the Bulge tour.
Mm.
And we have a few reached out to me. They said, "Listen, Reg, you will bring some cast of Masters of the Air on the tour. And if you've watched the show, there's this one scene where this guy, Babyface Hinton, how his plane goes down and he dies in the crash. But he's buried in Belgium somewhere, and it would be possible to include that in the itinerary on the Bulge tour, which is located at basically Liège, it's way a bit away from the Bulge area." I said, well, yeah, why not? We could. I mean, focus on a cemetery for a few moments. So I thought, like, hey, listen, if there's someone of the crew buried in Belgium, so there's a big possibility that the plane crashed in Belgium as well. So I did a quick Google search and I found out that Alice from Dallas crashed about 25 minutes from my house.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And I said, Leighton, you got to hear this. I mean, this is incredible. So then I did like an advanced search on Google and came into a website of a local group that been doing historical research. And they also did a lot of research on Alice from Dallas, the B-17 that came down there on August 17, 1943. So they had the stories and part of the escape and evasion of the pilots. And it's like, hey, this is great information. And it even had a detailed map of where the plane came down because it's a big area. because like it kind of exploded up in the air. Parts came down over like a 400 square yard area. And but they had a detailed map, like this is where it crashed. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I mean, this is almost unbelievable. So I got back to Leighton and Matt about this. I said, you got to hear this. Now, this is what happened. And then Leighton said, "Hey, Reg, a quick question." That's how he always starts his stuff. Like, "Hey, Reg, like a quick question." He said, "Is there
Right.
is there a monument there at the crash site?" I said, "Oh, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think there is a monument down there." So Leighton goes like, "Hmm." And every time he does that I know something's gonna follow. I mean, I said, and he said, like, well, can't we build one then? And I said, well, we can try. I mean, I can reach out to the local authorities to see if I can get some local support to do it. And that's actually how it all started changing from a 2 day Battle of the Bulge tour to like a 1 day Battle of the Bulge tour, 1 day Escape and Evasion tour. So I kind of um,
How long did it
cleared up.
take to get? How long did it take for the local authorities to sort of get behind it? It sounds like they must have got behind it pretty quick.
No, well, initially we got to know because I,
Yeah.
I I send in a file with all like who is Matthew Leach and what are we going to do? What's the goal? What's our goal and what do we want to achieve? Who's going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. But they said because I don't live in that town or that city, and so they said, "I'm sorry, we love your idea, we love the project, but we cannot support it because you don't have any local support, like locals who." Are willing to maintain it and because we don't want everyone from all over the world come here and build monuments everywhere and then leave and leaving it to us to maintain it and stuff and so I already told Matthew. I said, I'm sorry guys, but I did everything I could, but I gotta know. And then a couple of weeks later, one of the guys that I happen to know living in that town called me, Dirk Tillens, and he said, Reg, a few friends and I, we will support you. We will help you. We will be your local support to get it done. And as soon as we got that part official, the city said, okay, no problem for us. And then it started going really quick
Oh, okay.
to get it done. So, I mean, we had a few started a fundraiser to pay for the memorial. We got the
Matt, did you
permission, the
start
location.
a fundraiser? Sorry to interrupt, Reg. Did you start a fundraiser, Matt, for this?
What in the time you've known me makes you think I could start a
Yeah, I
fundraiser?
was about to say
Yeah,
that's quite ambitious.
yeah,
That's fantastic, though. Did you?
I,
How long did it take to
the
raise the money?
banner of my company, a fundraiser started, is all I will say.
yeah, yeah.
It weren't me.
But that went pretty well, that fundraiser, right? So a lot of people that were on the tour have been donating to the project. So now they could really see their project being unveiled, the monument, the plaque being unveiled to the crew and to the audience and everyone who was there. So that was quite emotional. And I was because I have received you too probably, Matt, several emails, personal messages saying like how special that moment was.
Mhm.
Well, it wasn't really a tour, but it was an experience. I mean, you were there, honor, pay respects to the crew of Atlas from Dallas at the spot where it came down. So it's kind of for many people a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah, and so as such, Doug, the morning of, so it occurred to me. I woke up at like, I mean, I'm lazy, and I woke up at like 4:30 in the morning that day, and I was like, all right, today is a special day. So I got up, had some coffee, worked out, went to breakfast super early, and I kind of wrote a speech like an any given every given Friday, whatever, every given Sunday, Friday night light speech, like a locker room speech. And I was like, look, this is not going to happen again in your lifetime. We've got the guys who played the parts,
Mm.
the veterans. Okay, you've got a memorial you guys funded, and it's going to be open, and it's a one-time deal. So today you got to get your goddamn game faces on. I expect a lot from you, type of thing. I was like revving everybody up, but I meant it. You know what I mean? I was like the confluence of things that are all coming together at this time. Was Reg sorting out this memorial, the guys actually who played it being there, and we're all there together, and the guys that funded it being there, and then you've got the colonel from the 100th Bomb Group there, and you got the local bloody mayor and the U.S. ambassador or whatever he calls himself now. We're all there at one point, and I was like, what I
Wow.
want from anybody, you
And
know,
what
is
did the what did the what's the you had an actual was it a colonel there from the
yeah, The
And
colonel.
what was his thoughts on it? What was his observations on it?
Well, it's a good lead-in segue, actually, Dougie, because you can actually see it on YouTube because we had Rob do a sort of YouTube videos for us. So he gave a speech at the cemetery.
which was very, very moving, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, it's incredible because he was literally he's a full bird colonel and his lips wobbling like this because it means so much to him. And then also he gave a speech at the memorial as well. It was a big deal for him. It was a really big deal for him. It was a big deal. He was just blown away. He was like,
Yeah. It was an honor for him representing the 100 Bomb Group, which is now the 100 Air Refueling Wing. But his connection basically was his grandfather was part of that same mission.
Mhm.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Not in I don't know, thinking 100 Bomb Group, but he was part of that same Regensburg mission. So that made it extra, you know,
Holy
special
moly.
for him. Yeah, yeah. He was
Well, that is
happy to be
special.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
the reason I gave that speech I was like, what I don't want is anybody, wandering off and giggling and having fun. But this is serious. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we all have fun together, so sometimes it can get a little
Yeah.
of a
But
social.
I think did everyone kind of get into the mood of it then, Matthew? How many coach though? Was it one coach you had? The
Yeah,
same.
but 50 people. You know, I can be a sergeant major when I want to be, so everybody did snap too, which was great because it's what it needed. Do you know what I mean? I wanted us to represent what
Mm,
we are as well, and how important it was to us as well.
yeah. And so the memorial that you put, was it on the actual crash site or was it just in the surrounding area, like in the local town or
Near
wherever?
Well,
get it.
yeah, because the plane exploded up in the air, so the parts got spread all over the place. But within like a 300-yard radius of the memorial, all around it, parts came down.
Oh wow.
You know, two crew members landed about 150 yards in the field from where the memorial is, with their parachutes, and they were evaded by the resistance before the Germans could get there. And the Germans got there within 15 minutes after the crash.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So
Wow.
it was quite kind of very special, and I agree with Matthew because mostly on our tours, it's like we have a lot of fun. It's joking. But this was something serious. This was from the heart, and everybody was, I mean, right in it. I mean, they were like in spirit. They were, very serious. They
Yeah.
were humbled. They were proud at the same time that they could do
Yeah.
this with We Happy Few. So it
Yeah.
was good to the group a complete different experience, and
Mm,
also an amazing team from the locals who took care of the ceremony.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, the little extras that they had, like a lot of reenactments, because they had, and then, we had a flyover. Initially, it was a friend of mine, Vincent Carpentier, who went over very well, flying a T-6 Texan U.S. training aircraft from World War II.
Right.
And I knew he was
Right.
going to do a flyover, but then all of a sudden there were three of them. I mean, there was like a Pilatus Swiss plane with the smoke coming over. So I thought, oh, it's
Oh,
two.
Pilatus. Yeah, I know Pilatus.
So I
Yeah.
thought were two flyovers, but then again, one guy came back for the Liberty spin
Yeah.
right above our heads, right when they were playing the trumpet, like
Mm.
yeah. Tip the wings as well. You know the salute where they tip the
They
wings.
tip the wings, yeah.
Pretty.
yeah. So that made it all very, very special. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah. It's gonna be tough to top that one, Reg. You're not quite
So
sure.
was that
yeah, yeah. I think that the only thing that we can do to top it is bring Jesus back to life.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, I mean,
so was that the what you call Matthew? Was that this escape and evasion tour then? Was it just like 1 or 2 days that
Yeah,
you initially had penned out to sort of identify this route of what happens to downed pilots in Western Europe when they get shot
yeah.
down?
Well, like you give Reg a scent of something, and he goes digging after a bone, and then digs up another bone, and then like
Yeah.
so we did some bold stuff day one, and then not
Mm.
that. Not only did we go to the cemetery, not only did we have the memorial, but prior to that, Reg had found a safe house, so we literally
Wow.
could take a bus to the safe house.
Yeah.
Can't go in because I think actually someone lives there now, or it's a working farm or something. But he'd done
no.
it just to like, and it's just ridiculous. It's like
Mm.
it was like hello. Literally, the Germans were in
Yeah.
one, and then the pilots were just underneath them, you know, in a bunk, coming and going, because this guy who
Wow.
house is like the most affable social guy in the neighborhood. So like he's friendly with the Germans, he's friendly with everybody. Nobody suspects that he's actually hiding out pilots.
He was
Wow.
hiding pilots in the middle of the Germans, yeah, hiding them amongst
Wow. And how did you find that information out, Reg? Is it Is because all the escape and evasion stuff, none of that would have been documented, would it? Or would it? Because wasn't it all
Yeah,
highly
locally,
secret in case?
locally.
Right. Yeah.
The thing is, I came across, one of the people who helped me out in building the monument, saying like, "Hey, we'll support us." He said, "Listen, Rich," and I found out in the research that they've done about a safe house, and he gave me directions, so I knew the location. I Googled it, I found it. There was no way I could contact the owners. It was still the same family owning it. So, so I just, yeah, I found a way through Facebook saying like, hey, anyone knows this guy's number? So I call him. And then on January the 1st, I just drove down there to visit. No, I drove down here first, sorry. And it was his wife opening the door and says, well, he's not home here, but here's his cell phone number. So I call him back later. And on January the 1st, I drove back to that place and he gave me a tour, telling everything about his father, showed me like where that secret room was in the house, where the Germans were,
Wow.
the observation post, and how and the strangest thing is one of the crew members of Alice from Dallas, John Bergin, he'd been hiding there for months in that house. And there's a
Wow.
photo of Frans von Gronsveld, I mean, who was 20 years old at that time, hiding pilots, and Bergen sitting on a bench in the courtyard of that house. So that was quite, yeah, doing a lot of research, field research, talk to the locals. So that's how you get the stories. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was
Wow.
amazing. So on the day one, the bowl store, we did some different stuff like the V2 lounge locations and stuff like
Hmm.
that. But then on day two was basically Hinton, the escape and evasion, the safe house, the crash of the plane. Talk a little bit about Operation Comet, the escape line to Gibraltar, bring pilots back to England, and kind of stuff. So it's a
So,
completely
so would
different
this
part of World War II.
so would this type of tour now be a bit of a permanent fixture, Matthew, do you think? Because it sounds like it was a big success, like, and quite unique in a way, because I remember you were talking about it for a little while before when you
Yeah, I'm
had new
right.
ideas.
I'm not sure between us we can hit quite the heights of that
No,
again.
you won't,
But
because there's only ever going to be one first time, isn't there? But
yeah,
you'll,
the tour in and of itself was great as well.
yeah.
Then went to the V2 rocket launch sites. Who was it? Was it Kai Alexander uttered the immortal lines, "Is that a scale model?" It's like a little tiny.
Yeah.
It,
Like this big.
yes, they took out parts of London with that guy. It was like it's like a bottle rocket size thing. Yeah, we yeah, we may revisit it. It's one of those things, Dougie, where Band of Brothers is huge. Masters is growing incrementally. So
Right.
like, or we could cast our net, get new people in on that tour. Do you know what I mean? I think people who are invested in We're Happy Few are happy to go where we take them, and are happy to be informed by someone like Reg with all these great stories. Whether or not we could roll something like that out again in any time soon,
Mm, mm.
bases on board, I don't know, because like I say, it's still like the reach for something like Masters is still quite small compared to Band, which is
Yeah.
huge.
Mm.
And you only need to put a Band of Brothers actor on a bus and say we're going somewhere, and everyone jumps on. It's just the way that it is. It's not
Yeah.
it's not on merit or whatever. It's just the way it is. It's the band's been around for 25 years and has got a huge reach, whereas Masters is new and people didn't know a lot about the history of it and all the rest of it, and they're just starting to learn. And the Apple platform that it's on is pretty narrow, and not a lot of people have it.
Yeah, that'll grow in time, wouldn't it?
But
When they start giving it to Netflix and other broadcasters, I think
yeah,
that's when it'll really open up. And how were the actors on it? How many came on to this one?
four actually. I said three on a live the other day, and I got told off by a bunch of people because there was the fella that plays Lurch, is it? Lorch? Sorry, Lorch.
Yeah, Lorch,
On
Ken Lorch.
right at the end, he was just like, "Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
come."
Nick Lorch. Yeah.
And so we had Sawyer Spielberg, Kai Alexander, and Bailey Brooke, and
Mm.
that young fella who's got like a French second name. I can't remember. Jumped up.
James Meunier.
Yeah, yeah.
And
They were great.
What was Spielberg like? What was the kid's Spielberg
He's
like?
he's a really cool guy. So like I've been sort of ever since he came on the podcast, I've sort of just been buddying with him, and I was supposed to go to an event in DC with him and Jimmy Madio, but I had personal reasons I couldn't go in the end. But he's just not anything like you would imagine. I can't remember who I was sat having a beer with talking about it. It might have been Adam, and just saying like top 10 recognizable names on the planet. Spielberg's one
Mm,
of them, and
mm,
like you did grow up in LA as a child, and you know that type. You've met that type from a
yeah.
famous family, LA type. But he's actually, I think he's long since lived in Long Island. He's a New Yorker, really. But he's just the most like laid back, affable,
Mm.
interest, cool, wants to learn his craft, nice guy, and
Does he
he's
work
just
in the
a
business then? Does he,
yeah,
what does he do? Does he want to be an
well,
actor, or is he an actor, or
I mean,
sorry?
he Peter, which is the pilot of the B-17 that went. Um, but he started out as a crew on a crew. I think I can't remember what he was doing. He had some type of crew role on Private Ryan, I think, just learning the business, and then he
Yeah,
went.
that's what I heard. I heard he was the other side of the camera. Yeah, yeah.
I think then he joined theatre companies in New York and Long Island.
Mhm.
He's just really into it. I mean, yeah, he's just a really really cool guy. Um, Nothing like you'd think at all.
That's cool. And when did you get back from the tour? How many days was it in total? Which bit of the bulge did you do, Reg? What section of that was it?
Well, every time it's a challenge to me because they have kind of a great bunch of regulars who are always joining us on the
Mm,
tour. So a lot of people have seen a lot of stuff already.
mm,
It's very challenging for me to find new locations, new stories, that are exciting and interesting, and not boring. So, and
mm.
plus the fact that with We Happy Few, we always try to do things differently. So basically, what we started out, I have to think, yeah, I think in the morning we started out at, let's see, Matt, where did we begin? We started out at the Bayonet. Oh no, at the bridge across the Lien River. This is part of Camp Group of Piper when the first SS Leibstein already had the second bridge blown up in front of their faces, and they had to move back to like Les. So, which was kind of a historical point. Then we moved up to Derremont, where possibly one of the last bayonet charges of World War II were performed by the 551 Parachute Infantry Battalion, also known as the Lost Battalion, because they got decimated in about a week from 790 to 110 guys. And then
Wow.
you got disbanded a couple of weeks later, so during the battle. So from then we move on to where the first V2 rockets were launched from in Belgium.
They're
Mhm.
only this big, but
Yeah, the Taliban. We talked
When
about.
were they first launched, the V2? What year? Was this right at the end? It must have been right.
Yeah, that was September 1944.
Okay. Yeah.
September 8, 1944. Yeah, and there were only two, and then one had was exploded up in the air, and the second one made it to Paris, just on the outskirts, hit a big house and killed some family members there. But ever since, more than 4,500 of these were produced. Were ballistic missiles, and 3,000 were actually fired on
Wow.
London, Antwerp, and Paris, and different other places in Belgium.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we talked a little bit about the engineer Wagner von Braun, who then later
oh yeah,
called himself a prisoner of peace in the United States because that whole team of engineers from Germany were brought back to the United States with all their knowledge, their equipment, and technology because the United States wanted to use it for their warfare.
Yeah.
So they pardoned them and they called it Operation Paperclip. So we kind of talked a little bit about that. Matt jumped in because he accidentally ran into Werner von Braun's grave back in Alexandria.
coming back from the pub, I was watching the
What?
rugby or something. I was with my mate Ricky Sticks, and we walked through this little graveyard from the pub to his house. And there is a little V2 rocket next to a grave in Alexandria. And I looked down, and it just says Werner von Braun on it. And I was like, is that Werner von Braun? But that can't be right. Like, Werner von Braun? And he's like, yeah, everyone knows that. It's like, he's gravesite next to West Braddock Road.
Wow.
It's the
Yeah.
maddest thing.
Yeah. So I think then we went off to lunch in Luxembourg, uh, somewhere. No, we went to lunch in Bastogne. That's correct. We went to lunch in Bastogne, and then from there we crossed into Luxembourg to Schumann's Eck, Schumann's Corner, which possibly covers the bloodiest battles that were fought in on Luxembourg soil. A couple of thousand were killed and wounded there in a short period. But it still have there the trenches on display, and it did some great like life-size soldiers displays in the foxholes and the bomber craters. It's like a walking trail where you can see all that kind of stuff, which is quite impressive.
Yeah,
Um,
especially
uh,
they've nicked Shifty, Shane, and Damien, I think, and they're in the forest. They've just nicked stills from the show, I think. I
Oh,
actually
really?
chain the Band of Brothers WhatsApp chain. I was like, I found you in the forest chain. But yeah, it's like I mean, some of them are just sort of like generic pictures from I don't know what, but some of them they've just like whipped a still. Not that I'm trying to get them in trouble because it's a cool thing. So, but I don't think they're gonna sue a forest in Belgium or Luxembourg. But yeah, they are. It is very very cool.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then
Then
yeah,
we moved on to Arlancourt. It was an amazing story of a medal. It was an amazing Medal of Honor story of Arthur Bayer, who actually kind of ran past the ridge back and forth, taking out German machine gun nests and back. And so that was quite an amazing sight. Having, I think, who read the Medal of Honor citation? I gave it to. Was it James or was it Kai? I think it was
uh, that in the
James.
forest.
No,
In the forest was Kai. Was that
yeah.
Beck was Kai? So I think it was James did
It
it.
was James reading the citation while everybody could see the ridge where it all happened. So that was quite impressive. And then we moved on to Houffalize, the link-up point between the Northern Army, First Army, and the Patton's Third Army from the south. Talk about the link-up, how it happened, closing the bulge, and visited the restored Panther tank. And then it was about end of day, I guess. By that time, it was getting dark by that time.
Yeah, everyone loves that Panther tank. Pictures by the Panther with Reg. That's how that. And then the next day was the big day with the Masters of the Air guys. So yeah, I had to make sure. Mostly the speech I gave was to make sure they were on point. I knew the Wee Happy Few guys would be, but I was like, all right, everybody sober up. Let's put our best foot forward and let's do this properly. Reg, so like we've chatted for about half an hour about what we've just done, and it was great. And I'm sure we're going to end up planning something in the near future cool to do. But I wonder if you wouldn't mind indulging me in the Reg origin story for the next part of the podcast. Um, and I'm sure Doug's interested as well. How did you get cracking on this? How did you get into this? Were you a historian? What's the difference between a historian and a tour guide? That sort of thing. What drew you to it? And then how
Well,
did you?
well, basically, it all started out as a child. I had a kind of an outspoken interest in World War II history. Well, history in general, basically, but it's my grandfather's story who drew me to World War II. I really got fascinated by World War II. My grandfather was a POW who got captured in 1940. He was wounded north of Paris with the Belgian army, and then he spent 3 years forced labor on a farm in Germany. Um, so that sparked me interest in World War II. Now, unfortunately, when he passed when I was like 4 years old, so I never got the chance to talk to him or to ask him questions and stuff. But I really had a big that drafted me to World War II history. And when I was kind of like 12, people my age were watching movies such as The Goonies, Back to the Future, E.T., and I was watching The Longest Day, A Bridge Too Far. I mean, Aliens, but that's because I had a child crush on Sigourney Weaver. And but then only I never had the chance to talk to my grandfather about this. So I started reading about it. You go to the library, AB Battleables. There you go, my backyard. And but I always wanted to meet a veteran, just to shake his hand and say thank you. And so when I was 18, I got my driver's license, drove all the way down to Bastogne with my lunchbox and visited the museum. Didn't know where to go. I mean, Chapel of Misery, never heard of it. All that kind of stuff. But I was having lunch there at the main square and with my sandwiches, and all of a sudden there's a bus pulling over, and there's like a lot of people coming, and there's guys and they're wearing a uniform with their medals, and I was like, oh my God, these are veterans. So I just walked up to them, shook their hand, and said thank you and thank you for your service and for freedom and stuff. And then these guys, hey, where are you from? I said, yeah, well, come sit with us. I mean, I gotta talk to them. I can't even remember the first names. So I chatted a little bit, gave them my address. They shared their postal address with me, so I wrote them a letter when I got back home. So I got an answer back about 18 weeks later because there was no internet with a little map, like a church, crossroad, foxhole, tank, me. So with that map, I drove back trying to find these locations. Like, wow, cool, I found this. Start reading more about it and make more trips, meeting more veterans. And then all of a sudden, it was the internet, and these veterans went back to the U.S. at their annual snowbird reunions or somewhere down there to say, "Hey, you're going to Bell? Hey, should give this kid a call, write him a letter. He knows his way." So that's how it all started rolling. And then all of a sudden, there was the internet, and I got more and more stuff to do. But then back in 2004, there was a uh, a tour group called Historical Tours, run by Christian Ray Pfeiffer. They contacted me and said, "Listen, Reg, we got your number and your email address, and we're bringing a group to Bastogne. I mean, we specialized in this for 26 years, but we know everything about the Fourth Armored Division, and we brought veterans back. But this time will be different because we'll have two paratroopers on our tour. They were in 101st. So, but we don't know anything about the 101st. Can I mean, show us around? Can you, bring them to the sites they fought?" I said, "Yeah, sure, why not? I'll do it." And these two veterans just happened to be Bill Garnier and Babe Heffron. And that's basically how I
What
kind of
year was that? What year was that?
2004, 2003, 2004, or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's kind of how I roll into who was on the tour. George Luz Jr. was there. I mean, and we stayed in touch, and so then more vets contacted me, and also the kind of rolled into the Easy Company guys' stories, and taking these guys on the tour, and then it actually kind of just I never solicited for it. So later then I was contacted by the McCullough family. Took his great nephew of the general on tour a couple of times with the Pattons, and with the U.S. Embassy. I was touring with the HMX-1, the entire presidential helicopter squadron under the Obama administration when he was visiting NATO. I toured with the crew of Marine One and Marine Two. I mean, it started going really quickly, and everybody wanted to, And so it all happened to me. And in 2016, I was contacted by Tim Gray of the World War II Foundation, and he says, "Listen, Reg, because I've been doing some stuff for Tim, on his documentary work that he makes." He says, "Listen, I've been doing these cast reunions to raise funds for my movie in Normandy, and I would like to do one in Bastogne. Would you like to be my boots on the ground down there?" And I was like, "Okay, well, that's a big question. I mean, I can't answer that right away, but give me some time." So ultimately, I agreed on doing that, making it happen, pulling it all together. I think, Doug, that was one that you were on Bastogne the first. I think it was 2016, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that was quite a big one, a big turnout.
It was. There's a lot of guys. There's
Yeah,
10
there
of
were
us there, wasn't there?
14
Yeah,
of them.
14. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of them, but we had Rick Gomez was on it.
So when going back, so when you were starting doing this, so you were already doing it, sort of doing, taking veterans back and veterans'
Yeah,
families back before Band of Brothers came out.
yeah.
Then. So what was it like when you actually saw the show for the first time? Because
Uh,
that and sort of bringing to life the thing that you'd been studying and interested in since you were like 5 or 6 years old or whatever.
yeah, I was amazed by it because I had no idea such a production was going to come. Because all of a sudden my wife said, "Hey, Reg, have you seen this trailer? There's this new show about World War II that's going to be airing next week." And I was just watched the first episode. I was like, and seriously, the first episode, it starts with like David Schwimmer on, and I was like, "Oh no, this just can't be good." I mean, that's Ross from Friends. It can't
Yeah.
be serious. But I kept watching it, and he was amazing. I mean, and that whole I got hooked. And then later, I tell you all that, and I was surprised by how realistic it was. It was not just the characters, but all the whole setup, the script. No, I mean the scenes, the snow. I mean how it was made. It was really kind of how I had it in my head. because you can read about it, you can hear the story, but you have to picture it in your head because you weren't there, right? And that was basically for a big part how I pictured it
Mm.
as what it would have been at the time. So they did an outstanding job, but I had no idea how this would explode and also come back my way. I mean, like 2016, first with Bill and Babe, and then getting to know the actual guys, and then 2016, getting into the circle of the cast and doing stuff with them. And I always tell people, they said, "Rich, how did you get into all this?" I said, "My life is just like one big Forrest Gump story. It just happened. I mean, things happen on my path." And
Mm.
well, I still try to do the same thing because my first job is bringing history to people and make sure that these guys are never forgotten by passing on their stories, because that's kind of a promise I made a couple decades ago to these guys. So when you're gone, I'll do anything that I can to keep telling your stories, so that our children and our grandchildren should learn from it.
Where,
Yeah.
whereabouts were, sorry, Matthew, whereabouts were you born in? What town, what area? Whereabouts do you come from?
I live now in Heusden-Zolder, which is not far from Hasselt, Belgium. So it's the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium.
All right.
Yeah.
And because there's one thing as an Englishman you never really understand until I went on that tour back in 2017 or 2016, whenever it was the amount of affection that Europeans, Western Europe has in general to World War II veterans and the war in itself, because we just have these old crusty memorials back in England, but because no foreign soldier set foot on the UK, there's no battlegrounds to visit.
No, but that's exactly what it's all about, because you had the Battle for Britain. You had the Battle of Britain, but you were never occupied.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
know, Western Europe countries been occupied by the Germans, and most countries twice, like Belgium twice, because it's something that we are really good at is being occupied. Um, but
Mm.
I never lost my freedom, but my family did.
Mm.
And that's the same story for everyone living in Belgium, France, World War
Holland.
II, the Netherlands too. So
Yeah.
when you lose your freedom, it's very hard to get it back.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, there's people from England, from Canada, from the United States, from all over the world, Ireland, coming to liberate the continent.
Mm.
Then we're forever grateful, because without them, we things would have looked completely different here in Europe. My name probably could have been Helmut or Gunther or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So things are complete. Our lives have changed back in a good way.
Mm.
Afterwards, so we're forever grateful for that. You had no battlefields, like you said. There were no enemy troops in England. I mean, fighting, occupying. London was never occupied and had to be liberated. Same in the United States,
Mm.
right? But that's why they are so in Europe. They're still today very very grateful for
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? It's
and they
amazing, isn't it, Matthew?
yeah.
Okay, cool. So one question I was going to ask you, Reg, is that like you've alluded to the fact that the veterans coming to Bastogne and places like that causes a huge turnout in interest. And then obviously, it's band guys come in causes a big turnout. But whenever I've been there and a veteran has been there, it causes a huge turnout in interest. Like everybody wants to come. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we're getting to the point where there aren't very many veterans left. And those that are left are going to struggle to travel that distance because of just frailty and age. Is that going to impact not so much the interest, but just how things are, how you, yeah, maybe interest, how you sort of like drum up support for these stories if the guys aren't coming anymore?
This process has been going on for a few years now, because you're losing them at a very, very high pace right now. And those who are here, they're like, I mean, really old, not very mobile. They are jet lagged. They're hauling from one event to the other event, and they're sitting there, and everybody wants their photos taken with them. But what I can see is also a growing interest by the families right
Oh,
now, of the veterans who want, because I have a lot of, especially past year, I got a lot of customized tours. Families saying, like, my dad was in this division. We want to go where he fought. We want to stand where it all happened. Or I had an uncle who was in the Bulge. I want to walk the path of his company or his regiment. and they want to have it customized, getting as close to where their father or their grandfather was. And sometimes I'm able to provide that help, like bringing them really to a section of which, like you see the foxholes, this was your dad's company, so he was somewhere around here. So it's getting more and more of that kind of stuff. So, but for the standard tours, I still see a still growing interest by the young people.
Yeah.
And that is because of Masters of the Air. That's still because of, you can call it crazy, but it's still because of Band of Brothers and all the war movies. Because if you see, they're still making these war movies, and if people had no interest in this topic anymore, they wouldn't go to watch it. That means there would be no revenue, so they would be stopping making war movies. I mean, you have no idea how much money is involved in the world of war gaming.
Yeah.
Mm.
It's unbelievable that there's a huge interest also by the young people because gaming, movies, books, all kind of stuff, and which in a way is really nice to know because they will be the people who have to pass it on to their children and tell them like, hey, go to that museum or go and book a tour or go to see that new memorial down there. And that's why it's so important, Matthew, that what we did with the memorial Alice from Dallas. It's in like a nice little suburb, like some dead end street where some young families live. So their children will ride their bikes by that monument a couple of times a day. So they will grow up, with the memorial and the story of Alice from Dallas. So later when they get married, they probably tell it to their kids,
Mm.
right? But I don't think that now that the veterans are almost gone,
Yeah.
that has a huge impact on people visiting or on the interest in World War II history. I don't think so. Because there's also the effect like, oh, dad just passed away. He never talked about the war. And now we wish that we asked him some more questions. So now they're coming over to find out and putting the puzzle back together, and that's when they call me. But I don't think it has much of an impact, no. I'm not telling that it will be the same in like 15, 20 years, unless another Band of Brothers happens. But yeah, I think it's still you still feel the Band of Brothers effect.
Yeah.
And,
And I
and I,
tell well, I wanted to ask you about as well, was one particular veteran that you made friends with that I was slightly starstruck by. Because I don't know if you remember, Dougie, when we did band and they gave us our research books and everything, obviously, they gave us the Stephen Ambrose book, but they gave us a couple of others. And one of them they gave us was Currahee
don't forget,
and
yeah,
Seven Roads to Hell as well. And whereas Band of Brothers, the book itself, it's like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it reads like this would make a brilliant 10-part miniseries. Uh, Not great for an actor to research because it's a lot of sort of accounts and stories put together, which is the outline for a really good miniseries. Whereas Burgett's book, Currahee, I found incredibly useful just to bring that world alive. I thought it was brilliant. I thought Seven Rose to Hell was brilliant. And then Reg just throws out this like name drop. Oh, yeah, my buddy, me and Don Burgett. And I was like, you knew him? Tell me.
yeah. I stayed at his house in Howell, Michigan in 2007.
Dang.
Don has been visiting Bastown a couple of times with me. I went to Normandy with him and with American historian Mark Bando joined us one day, and I think I met Don for the first time in 2004 as well. Yeah, and I was a big fan of his books, by the way. And he wrote his books about 30 years after the war, just right from his memory. So
Right.
not everything happened exactly how he described it, but he had some pretty good stories. I remember standing in Normandy with his grandson Jacob, and we were at the Marmion farm where his famous Easy Company photos were taken with Forrest Guth and the guys. And Don said they were at yeah, there's a little driveway leading up to the gate of the farm, but where the driveway crosses the road, there were like trenches on both sides. Don said there were trenches, and they were now overgrown with bushes and kind of stuff. But Don said that he and his buddy right after they jumped into Normandy, been hiding in one of the trenches, and that they feared that the Germans would come back. So they built like a 2 feet wall by stones they collected in that area and built it up there to hide behind. And man, Jacob, his grandson, jumped into that ditch and he just pulled out that 2 foot wall, just like Don described it. And that was like kind of
Wow.
amazing. I mean, all the details, how he writes. Seven Roads to Hell is one of my favorites. I think it's a must read to everybody. It's like you're actually fighting with them. You're among them. Moving into Noville. Everything that he sees down there. And he was a great storyteller because the way he wrote the book, it's like he would tell it to you, just like
Mm,
he wrote it like he would tell it, and he was a great storyteller. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and it's I think I can remember the blurb on the back of the book vividly saying he was cool like only a 19-year-old could be cool in those situations. I mean, he tells offhand stories of like running across a field in Normandy and he's jumping on everyone's bodies and the air and the is coming out of them because they bloated out and
Yeah.
Oh,
But he was a
it,
special character. He was always like, he was always in for a good joke. I mean, he could laugh, man. He could laugh. But he had stories also in his post-war life. I mean, I was visiting him and going to some family book, photos, and I said, Don, who is this? And he's playing Monopoly with Jimmy Hoffa. I mean, but that he happened to be his, back neighbor's daughter godfather. So every once in a while, one or twice a year, he would visit, and Don happened to be there. And then he stories. I know Curry Heat. That's the only book that was endorsed by Eisenhower.
oh
And,
well.
oh,
yeah,
what?
and at the book at the release, they had like a big banquet organized. We're all sitting at a publisher and guests and veteran friends and stuff. It was very kind of a fancy kind of book release kind of thing. And all of a sudden, there is a waiter showing up at Don's table, holding a plate with like a phone on it, like with a horn lying right next to it. And he goes like, "I'm looking for Mr. Donald Burgett." And Don goes, "Well, that's me, right?" And says, "Yeah, there's a call, someone on the phone for you." So Don picks up the phone and he goes like, "Well, hello." And there's a voice on the other side saying like, "Am I speaking to Mr. Donald Burgett, the veteran, the author?" "Oh, yes, sir, that's me." "Well, I want to congratulate you with your book. This is General Eisenhower." And Don thought it was a joke. He goes, "Well, and my name's Mickey Mouse." Click, and he hung up. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, he's kind of he was an amazing storyteller. He was an amazing guy, and he was an amazing father. And I miss that guy. I miss him big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I did tell you that belt buckle story, Matthew, in Bastogne one day, how he got it from the German that he shot.
Yeah, yeah. Go ahead and tell it, man.
Well, basically, Don told a story that they were advancing because a bunch of Germans had broken through the American defenses of the 101st, especially in the area where the link up was between the 501st Regiment and the 506th Regiment at Hull Station. So, but a bunch of Germans towing some assault guns had broken through that area one night, and I think it was about like December 20th, around that time. But they got, you know, kind of captured. They were Americans saw them and they closed the gap behind them, so they got isolated behind enemy lines. And Don's unit was sent in, coming from the direction of Savy, to pinch these Germans out. And during that action, Don was advancing. I mean, and there was some shooting going on back and forth. Couldn't see much. It was foggy. There was no snow on the ground yet, but it was still getting dark. And they were actually pushing the Germans out of the woods. And Don said suddenly, it felt like someone hit me in the eye. And I passed out for a few seconds and I went down. And when I woke up again, just a few seconds, he said, I noticed I've lost my rifle. It was like 3 feet away from me. And but in front of me, he said there was a German jumping up and down like a jack in a box, shooting at us. So basically, what happened, he said, is that German had fired at him, and the bullet had snapped the strap of his helmet, and his chin cup flipped up, and that's what hit him in the eye.
Hmm.
So his Don said I was lying there, and I could do nothing, and he was standing in front of me, holding me at gunpoint to finish me off. And all of a sudden, I don't know what happened, but that guy got distracted and turned his face the other direction. And Don said, I leaped forward, grabbed my rifle, and I shot him and I killed him. And he said, I jumped into that foxhole, I pulled the big guy out of it. And I put my rifle on his belly and I continued shooting at the other Germans. He said, then I noticed that he was wearing a buckle saying he was from the German Luftwaffe, from the German Air Force. Because, for that operation, the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler, I mean, he assembled everyone he got. He mobilized everyone. If you were an airman, you didn't have a plane. Now you're infantry. And he said maybe that's why, because he said maybe a trained infantry would have finished me off right away. Maybe that's
Mm.
because he lacked that experience of a ground forces that got him killed. But he said,
Wow.
I took that back belt buckle home. I had it chromed and I wore it to work for about 20 years
Mm.
after the war. And he showed me that buckle. I got a nice photo of it, like nicely chromed at home. So
Wow.
that's one of Brigitte's stories.
What a story.
Yeah, well, Seven Roads to Hell is full of it. I mean, it's a
Mm.
really, really amazing book.
Yeah. So, just I think probably my final question to you, Reg, is for you personally, uh, if they could, the Plato magicians that have brought us the last three Band of Brothers trilogy, if they could do one story that would make you happy, what would it be? I mean, do you want to go into sea now, or what do you reckon? Submarines? I'm not sure.
I still think what's big missing is a very good series on the Battle of the Bulge. And it's not because this is the area I operate from, because I do Netherlands as well and Hurtgen Forest and kind of stuff. Hurtgen Forest could be good.
Yeah,
Hurtgen
Mm.
Wald, but it's not a happy story on for from the Americans' perspective. But there's so many facets in the Battle of the Bulge. You can focus on the Air Force, you can focus on the artillery, you can focus on Kampfgruppe Piper, you can focus on Sankt Fit, you can focus on the big picture, different units, and then melting it together in one big story. I mean, there's so many opportunities because so much happened there at the same time that you can easily make like a 12 episode series about it because it's never been done properly. You had that crappy movie, The Battle of the Bulge.
Mm.
You had that film, it's called Battleground, I think was 1947, 1948 that came out. It's a cult movie because most of the actors were actual veterans who were there, but there's a lot of long dialogues in it. It's not like it's fun, it's good to see. But I mean, a good show on the Battle of the Bulge, maybe focusing, you know the story of the INR platoon, Matthew. You've been there. What a cool story is that, right? We talked about the 551, the bayonet charge. I mean, you can have so many great stories in that whole Battle of the Bulge
Mm.
window, basically, and it's
So
never
you
been done
think,
properly.
yeah, you think another show like with ground troops, sort of similar to Band of Brothers, but just with different units, effectively.
Yeah, or you can do a mix. You can pick like four characters and follow them around the bulge. Like one's a German, one's a tanker, one is a paratrooper, one is an artillery guy, or a civilian.
Yeah.
Because
What
there's
would you, Matthew? What would you like to see? I'd like to see. I don't know if there's any value in doing a naval story. What would you like to see, Matthew?
Arnhem.
yeah.
Arnhem, really? Yeah.
Arnhem done in real detail. I'm not saying Bridge Too Far isn't a good film because, especially of its time, it is. But I would like to see it done like Band of Brothers style. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
well, Matthew. In that case, if you go on YouTube, there is an old movie it's called "Theirs Is the Glory," and that
Yeah,
was
that had the real guys in it.
with the real guys in it, with the
Yeah.
burned out tanks still in Oosterbeek.
Yeah.
So that's some.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool. Because I saw a documentary recently when a guy talks about the making of that "Theirs Is the Glory" movie, and as a child, he witnessed it. All these British veterans who returned, and when they were not actually filming on the set, he said there was a bunch of guys actually playing football right here on the street in front of my house with the children. But when the ball went off the field, it landed into like a meadow just on the side of it, and which happened to be a minefield. So he remembered what they did was they were drawing straws, like whose turn it would be to get the ball out of out of the minefield. Right there. But yeah, I agree with Matthew because there's a lot of amazing. We did a great tour, by the way. I got a request to do it again. People wanted to do it again. But yeah. Arnhem will be awesome. Arnhem, Nijmegen Arnhem.
Yeah, either that or a Spanish Civil War one would be awesome. Just the origins of the ideological war. The Russians back in one, the Soviets back in one side, the Germans the other, and just the beginnings of all that and
Yeah.
training.
Yeah,
But yeah, but
interesting.
it doesn't
Very
always
few people
happen.
know anything about that.
And I'd love to do a
That
tour.
boy. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think anybody knows about it particularly.
Yeah. Yeah,
It
interesting.
doesn't really have to be about the battles itself. I mean, there's so many different aspects on World War II,
Mm.
Yeah.
right? Like imagine like what we did with the escape and evasion. I kind of pointed out again and again the importance of the resistance, people helping to evade, not just airmen, but also infantry guys and stuff, bring them to safety. You can do it like whole stuff, like
Yeah.
hello, hello, the movie, but the serious one about that aspect, what you can focus on, different, completely different part
Yeah,
too,
interesting.
or the
Yeah.
politics behind it, and the decisions, and because I know a lot of movies have been made, like mincemeat, and I mean, but there's still a lot of uncovered ground yet.
Mm.
Yeah, endless. Oh well, Reggie, we've had you for an hour. Thank you so much. It's been great. It was a brilliant tour. We'll work together again soon, I'm very sure. Just thanks for everything you did on that tour. I know we were going to have a debrief Zoom meeting the other day, but I thought we'd better to just do it almost in public because then, everyone can know about all the work that you put into this tour, all the work that you do. And anybody who is listening out there, I know we've got quite a worldwide reach, who does have, family members who fought in any area sort of that Reg covers. Just find him out. He'll put the work in for you, and he'll do your personalized tour. And it's is don't nod along to this, Reg, but there are good and bad guides. Okay, uh, like there are good and bad doctors, and there aren't many good doctors and there aren't many good guides, and Reg is one of them. Do you know what I mean? So seek him out and let him put a bit of work in for you, and like you will not be disappointed. Because he cares about it a massive amount, and the energy comes out, and it's just like you'll go away from it thinking, "Damn, that was worthwhile. That was worthwhile the miserable bloody flight and the jet lag and all the rest of it. It's worth it." So that's what I wanted to say as well. So thanks very much, Reggie, and thanks for coming on, baby.
Well, thank you. Pleasure was all mine, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Reg. Good to see you again. Take it
And
easy.
likewise, Doug. Good to see you again too. Bye, Leighton.
See you, man. All right. So I guess I'll sign off. Dougie, it's great to see you again. Not sure my camera's actually working now, but I did sign back on. I think I just look like a chess piece in the bottom right hand corner of my screen. Uh,
Yeah, I can't see you. But yeah, good to see you again. I'll see you next week. Yeah.
Buddy, stay safe, stay
All right,
well.
take it easy.
All right, boy. Thanks very much.
Cheers,
Cheers, mate.
guys.